So I'm going to show you where we left off, but this isn't really where we left off because I had a massive crash and my files got corrupted. And so what I had to do is go into Unity version control and go to change sets. And I had to go back a few change sets. And then when you could right click on this, you can go to revert to change set. The problem with that is when you revert back to the previous change set using Unity version control, you lose all of your current work. So I spent a significant amount of time just trying to get back to where we were. So if there's little things that are different, like number values or and stuff like that, please forgive me, or things are placed in different orders. But everything else should be pretty much the same, where we have our character running and there's like donuts and fruit coming at him. All right, so what I'd like to do is introduce like a hurdle, like a fence or a hurdle for our guy. And what this is this, again, I'm picking this dreamlike state where this guy's like running because he's got a problem with food or something. Maybe this is maybe something it's in my subconscious, but I'm just thinking of something that again, we have these hurdlers here. Maybe we can institute where we jump, but for now I'm just thinking of just something, a box with two boxes, and we'll go a little more advanced and maybe we'll extrude this out or something so you guys can see how to do that. All right, so what I'm going to do inside of here is I'm going to right click, create an empty game object, and just call this hurdle. And I forget, I guess I named it, I would put like obstacle. So hot hurdle obstacle. I'm just kind of looking at trying to keep my naming conventions the same for my prefabs. And this hurdle obstacle is going to get spawned at different lanes or different parts of that ground. So let's go ahead and reset this so that we make sure that it's 0 to our world. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to tools. Here, let me move this out of the way. And then Pro Builder window here. And I'm going to make a new shape. Now we are, like I keep bringing up here and there, we do need to essentially eventually go to Unity 6 in the next project. And many of you are probably already Unity 6 now. So I'm going to have a video, and please reach out to me on the differences on how to model using Unity 6, because everything is essentially the same except how you make scripts. I mean, on the surface level and how you create scripts and game objects. But Pro Builder is a little different. They're actually integrating more. So I'm actually going to hold Shift out here just to create a cube. And then what I want to do with this cube is I'm just going to select that bottom face here, and I'm going to hit Set Pivot. And what happens is it sets the pivot to the center of this bottom face. And then I'm going to go back to object mode here. And then if you see that I go to pivot here, you can see that's on the bottom. And so now when I select this cube here, let's see if we can make sure we're in object mode. Expand my transform. You can see the transform is off, but when I reset it, it's at the center of his feet. And now what I can do is I can just start to say, okay, well, I'm going to duplicate this essentially 3 times. So I'm just going to kind of move it to where I'd like a hurdle to essentially like be widthwise. And I'm going to, let's see, select this bottom face, move it up like this. Select these 2 faces here. And let's see if we can do local. Does that do it? Maybe center. I'm going to hit R, and that should let me expand it out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse this. So I'm going to hit Control D here, and I'm going to move it towards the bottom. And that's going to be this bottom bar here. And I'm going to select that top face, move that down a little bit. And then it might be easier just to create another cube. I mean, we can do that. Let's go to new shape here. And I'm just going to make another cube here and go all the way up like this. And maybe we'll make these 2. I'm going to hold Shift on both of these. Select these 2 front faces. Just kind of move them in a little bit. Like that. Then select this bottom face here. Bring it down. And what I want to do is create maybe that curve that goes out. So select this edge here. And then what I'm going to do on my tools here, and I can move this off maybe up here, is I'm going to insert an edge loop. And it automatically selected it. Now, if you click off and then you click back on, you're like, how do I select that edge ring again? You can hit select edge ring here. Or sorry, you want to select edge loop. I keep saying loop, and then I've loop, and you can see now it's selected that whole loop. I'm going to hit F and it'll focus in on that edge loop. And I'm going to move it down like this. And I'm going to grab these verts and just kind of average them a little bit so that it looks like they're sort of rounded here. See that? And then I'm going to select this back face and just hold shift and just extrude that out. So something like that. And really what we're going to do is, I don't want to make this too big because I want him to be able to run around it. So we might have to edit this. But I'll show you a way to edit this a little bit later. So let's kind of make this a little bit thinner. Maybe in here. I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to center the pivot on that. Then I'm going to hit Control D and just shift it over to the other side somewhere. Now, like I said, this is a pretty huge hurdle. And if we look at our ground when I press play, we don't want it to take up like 50% of the ground. So that actually might be okay here. So let's go ahead and uncheck play here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you we can kind of scale it up or scale it down. So go ahead and select all three of those pieces. And then you want to look for merge objects. And I'm going to name this hurdle obstacle. And it wouldn't be a bad time right now. I'm going to go ahead and move this off to a center pivot on this. And then let's, what's this one? Oh, this is the hurdle obstacle empty transform that's at the bottom of his feet. And then this is our hurdle obstacle game object. So I'm going to name this hurdle obstacle or hurdle mesh. And then I'm going to drag this underneath this hurdle obstacle. And then I'll grab this hurdle obstacle and I'll just make a prefab out of it. Now what we can do is we can go inside of here and select our hurdle mesh. And then we could say, you know what, I want it to be, and again, as long as you have, let's see, select hidden off. I'm going to move those in a little bit. Oops. Or select hidden on, sorry. You'll be able to select everything behind it. And we can play with the size by just kind of dragging a big marquee, bringing it in. Looks like I still missed a vert somewhere. Or just my mesh, my view isn't updating. That's another thing. See how the view isn't updating, but it doesn't look like that problem is there, right? So if I bring this down, it's not really updating. So let's back out. It might update our view. Oh, you know what it did? Let's go inside of here and then, I don't know, let's see. Let's undo a bunch, I guess. And then let's make this a child. Well, we have this hurdle obstacle prefab here. Let me delete this one, these two. Drag this one back in. Okay, there we go. So now I should be able to go inside of here, select my hurdle mesh, and then edit it. So bring these in a little bit. Bring this down. Bring this over. And I wonder why it's not updating in my view. So if I go back, if I hit apply all, maybe I have to do that. Interesting. Maybe if I delete it from here and I just double click this guy, I could probably edit it this way. I wonder if that's the ticket to, because it looks like it's updating here. This a little bit thinner. And if I drag this in, will that update? Yeah, looks like it updated there. Okay, so a little weird. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we have a hurdle. I'm going to go ahead and delete that out. Make sure to check it in to version control. I do these frequent check-ins because it's kind of stressful that it does that. And what I mean by does that, I mean it crashes from time to time. All right, so let's go ahead and script our fence. And what we're going to be using is something called a list. And we've talked about these before, but again, what I'm trying to get you is in the very beginning of when you took programming classes with me, you took these basic classes where you learned about code structure, functions or methods, things like that. Now we're getting into data structures or more into the data structures part of object-oriented programming. And then towards the end of this curriculum, you'll be working on design patterns. And just remember those three buckets, because when you go for a job interview or whatever, Really, that's the way you want to think about scaffolding your learning, aside from just writing good, clean code. So inside of here, we're going to go to scripts and we're going to create another one. And we're just going to call this hurdle. Now, the thing with this is you generally want to name your stuff level generator, obstacle spawner, things like this, because you want it to be generic enough where you can just make a variable and the variable is called the hurdle prefab or whatever. And and you could also reuse the scripts over and over and over again. So anyway, for now, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and I'm going to open up both scripts. Right, so what I'm going to do is, because you've seen lists before and functions and stuff, I'm going to do my best to actually remember this as well. I'm going to pause the video, type out the code, and then explain it. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create, let's clean up our screen a little bit here, a variable that's going to store our hurdle prefab. Okay, and that's our hurdle obstacle, which is in here in our prefabs folder. All right, so here we have a variable that we created called hurdle prefab, and this is just going to store our hurdle. And then I just typed out a name for a method that's going to actually spawn our hurdle. So I'm going to hold control and hit the period and hit extract method, and then hit extract method again. And then it's kind of interesting that it didn't. Let me try that one more time. Control period. Yeah, create method. There we go. I wonder if it's because I clicked here. It should have just knew to create the methods. That's strange. But anyway, nice little feature. And so here we have spawn hurdle. And inside of this spawn hurdle, we're going to go ahead and instantiate our hurdle prefab. So let me go ahead and type that code out. So what I want to do is, let me go ahead and grab my ground as well. Okay, so here's our character. And I need to know, I want 3 lanes where those hurdles are going to appear. So if I move this all the way, this being the runner character, if I move this all the way to the left, you could see I can probably spawn one here at minus 2.5. I can put one at 0 in the center here. And then over here, I could probably do, actually 3 might make, 0, 3, 3 might make better sense. And that'll give me enough space to kind of run through. We'll go ahead and adjust the scale of our hurdle prefab again, like by playing with those verts or the scale itself. So, because what we're going to do is, like I said, in this script, we're going to programmatically essentially not only just program those 3 lanes, but we're going to space out where our hurdles spawn. Two might spawn next to each other, and then our character will trip over them. And then later, if there's time in the class, we'll program the jumping. I mean, at this point, you might already know how to do the jumping mechanic, or be able to look up the reference online enough to do it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and make a array, and it's storing 3 numbers, and those 3 numbers are where our hurdles will spawn. Okay, so you can see we have this array, and it has 3 values: -3, 0, which stands for that center lane, and then 3, which is our rightmost lane. And remember, because this is an array, these are at different indexes. So this one here is at index 0 if we want to access it. So we would do something like, in our code, we would write, lanes, 0 here. And then this would, I put an O in there instead of a 0. And then this would spit out whatever is in lane 0, right? Because this is accessing that. I mean, it's giving us an error here because it's like, what are you doing with this? Are you making it part of something? Are you, are you printing this to the screen? And let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit Control S to save this, just to show you one more time. And I know we've done arrays in the past, but it's always great to have a reminder. So this script right now, if I just attach it to, I don't know, anything in our scene, like our ground, for example, and we might get an object for no hurdle prefab. So I'll just drag the hurdle obstacle on here so you could just see it. But we have 3 lanes here, and one is -3, 0, and 3. See how this is at element 0? What this should do is this should print out the number 3 to this, or -3 to the console, because that's what this does. So if I press play now, you can see in our console, we get -3, because -3 is an index 0, and that's how you access it. So just a quick refresher. All right, so inside of our spawn hurdle method, and you can see up here, I didn't do anything different. I'm working my spawn hurdle method. I'm just grabbing in this variable, it's an integer, and I'm just grabbing a random, because random range really it could be random range float, or it could be an int. We're going to just store inside of here any random index from 0 to 3, because remember, we're going to spawn them in randomly in our scene. And so remember, this has really what to do with the lane and the position, minus 3, 0, or 3, not necessarily the random number of the hurdle, because we only have one hurdle. Now let's take a look at how we can use this random lane index to set the position on the x-axis inside of a variable. So we need another variable here, type vector3, and like I said before, I'm just going to call this one spawn position. And what I mean by said before is I'm going to pause the video and type that out. Okay, so kind of broke this up into a bunch of lines. Don't get scared. So this is just us creating the variable and setting up new space. This is our x, y, and z value. Do you see this x colon here? This is something that Rider puts in there to let you know that this is the x value. Do not type this. I know I've said this before, but I still see students' projects pop up and they'll type this x colon, and their code seems to run. So I guess it doesn't make a huge difference, but I'm assuming that it's going to cause errors later. Anyway, so on the x-axis now, this spawn position variable, which really is just storing 3 values, right? The x, y, and z, is saying in this lanes.random lane index here, I want a random number from 0 to 3. That's all this is going to do. And it's going to give me that anywhere from that random range. And then what we can do is we can use this to, in our instantiation method. So maybe I'll just type this one out so you can see that. In our instantiation method, remember, it's pretty easy. It can take 3 or 4 values. One is the object you want to spawn. So this is the hurdle prefab here. And then let me go ahead and hit enter here. And then the position that I want to spawn it in. Well, I want to spawn it randomly wherever the y and z position is on whatever game object is in the scene. And then a random index on the x. So I'm just going to use spawn position there. I'm going to hit a comma there. And then it's the rotation, quaternion.identity. And then remember, you could put a fourth property in here, and that becomes the the hurdle parent. You know what I mean? And that fourth property is where, like we'll put like an empty game object in here, and that'll be where all of our hurdles spawn under. And that's what we use. I use the kind of I like to use to clean up or really compartmentalize my scene. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit apply all for my ground here, and I'm going to leave this connected, and it has my hurdle obstacle, and I'm going to delete this. Because remember, what happens is my ground prefab appears in the scene, and now it has a hurdle script on there that'll automatically load that hurdle. So if I press play now, what you'll see is, you see that hurdle spawning randomly in my scene, and it's doing a random index. I don't see, I see one all the way down there. And part of it is actually, I think we're missing. Let's go into our hurdle obstacle here. What I want to do is, I have a mesh collider here, but what I really want is a box collider, just so that we can block that other stuff. And then I'm going to just kind of move this up. Now, because we're editing the one inside of our project here, we don't have to hit apply all or anything like that. It automatically applies it. So I'm just going to do it like this. It's not necessary that these legs have collision on them, just that the sides of this hurdle do, because like I said, I want my character to hit it, and then we're going to go to Mixamo eventually and just download an animation where our character is like tripping. Let's see. I think that's wide enough. Well, let's make sure this is a little tighter, because again, I want to give my character also room to run. Maybe we'll do something like this. You decide when you're making your game if it feels quote unquote real enough for you. Remember, this is supposed to be a dream sequence where this character's running in his dream about food. So, the narrative kind of emerged in our game as we went. But yeah, if I press play now, you can see it spawns randomly across those 3 lanes. Now, you might be wondering, well, how are you able to get it where it's spawning this way? You know how it's like in random locations across many of these? Don't forget that these ground positions here are actually this script is attached to these ground clones. So as they spawn, or we spawn these ground positions in our scene, they're spawning this way, and then these hurdles appear as they're going. Now, it's not, for some reason, it's not following, so we're gonna have to fix that right now. And you probably guessed it at this point. You're like, well, I want it to spawn to ground parent or to the ground object. Well, there's an easier way to do this. So I'm gonna hit a comma here and I'm gonna hit enter. I'm just gonna type this dot transform. And what that means is whatever script, let me save that. Whatever script that we have attached to this, right? Whatever script we have attached to this, sorry, whatever game object this script is attached to, this transform is going to attach this object to it. So now when we press play, and that's the fourth element of our instantiation, that fence post will connect to that ground piece. Do you see that? And now we can move in these different directions. And what we'll do again is, these might not be wide enough, or they might be. I don't know. We might, I think it'd be cool to have power boosts. So we're really, you're really there. You almost have a power. You could see, and these food pieces are also interacting with the posts. We're really getting there. We're really getting a solid, endless runner game, that we've played on our phones and stuff. Let's also make sure that our runner here is centered as well. So let's reset this transform here. And let's say Control S to save this. I think that's good for now. What we'll do next is we'll start to really think about how we can do lane detection so that it knows which lane that we're in, it being the system. All right, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and yeah, I'll see you in the next tutorial.